Good day. Welcome to another edition of Ebima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs. Before I continue, I urge you to please press the like button. And if you're new to my show, I also urge you to subscribe. It's a very interesting thing how events in this world are shaped by sometimes unseen circumstances. Sometimes too much knowledge is not a good thing because today in America, the Saudin Crown Prince was fitted. But there's a story behind this arrival of the Saudi Prince. I'll just like to give some brief history about it. In 1932, a newly formed country then was Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and it was formed by the activities and the successes of Ibn Abdulaziz Ibn Saud. Abdulaziz ibn Saud inherited a very impoverished, poor country. At that time, in the Middle East, the place that was of interest to the great powers, Britain and France, was Israel, Syria. Forgive me, it was not Israel, it was Iran and Iraq and Syria. The reason being that these places had huge amounts of oil. They had discovered oil there, but not just that, they were very strategic. They helped the British, the great power of the time, to secure their trade routes. They were making sure that no country could block their trade routes to India. India was the crown in their jewel then. And when Ibn Saud sent a delegation to Britain, to London, to go and ask for help, they were impoverished then. They didn't have the kind of wealth as we know them to have today now. Ibn Saud sent his son and a delegation, and they met a British officer then called Oliphant, Lancelot Oliphant, if I remember. It turns out he didn't particularly welcome them very well. He did the most he could as a diplomat. He welcomed them as he could. But when they asked for a loan, and then they also went ahead and asked for British involvement in exploration of oil in their country, the British passed on that offer. They didn't know Saudi Arabia, and they didn't see the prospect of oil being found in Saudi Arabia. So they passed on it. Ibn Saud reached out to the Americans and gave a concession to Standard Oil. The rest is history. 5 years down the road, Standard Oil found oil. After drilling some failed wells, they found oil in Daman number 7. Today, Saudi Arabia is known to have among the largest reserves of oil in the world. They have a field, the Gadwa field in Eastern Province, I think, a very huge field. And it has about 71 billion barrels of oil in reserve. Saudi Arabia is now a powerhouse in the Middle East. Their oil has helped in transforming that country. We know of the development of Riyadh, the development of Jeddah, Medina, all these countries, and Saudi Arabia is now a player in the Middle East. But over the past few years, things have not been particularly good for the Saudis regarding their relationship with America, and President Trump has come to try and improve this relationship. We should remember that one of the great things that the Saudis did for the American that helped to sustain and revive their hegemonic strength was that when they went off the gold standard, the Saudis were the ones who promised that they will let all their oil sales to be in dollars. And that's where the concept of petrodollar came. And that's how come today the dollar is the reserve currency. The Saudi Arabians have a very good relationship, but that relationship was spoiled by the death of and the killing of one journalist and the virulent attack on the Crown Prince by the media in America. We should remember that the media in America has an interest. They always do. And besides, the media is heavily tilted and in the hands of one particular group of people who do not want to see the progress of the Saudis. They tend to be very close to the Israeli lobby. So one of the things that happened is that the Saudis were made a pariah, but not under Trump. Trump sees that in this time and age when America is not having a good time regarding the investments in our bonds and treasuries. Countries like China and Russia and traditional investors in that particular strand of American borrowing and credit, they've started to leave. They don't do so much of investment anymore. But the Saudis and the countries in the Gulf have been very reliable partners. Why? Because the Americans protect them. Americans provide them security. Americans protect them very seriously. The monarchies of the Gulf states have unparalleled protection from Americans, and that protection was called into question, and that was one of the reasons why they went into fighting the first Gulf War. It was to protect the monarchy in Kuwait. Anyway, this extensive history is very necessary for us to know that there had been a very big, fruitful relationship between Saudi Arabia and America over the course of the past 90 years until it was fractured very briefly. But even then, the Saudis and most of the countries in the Middle East, they decided to look within themselves, and they have decided to spend a lot of their money, not in buying American treasuries, but in developing their countries. We know of the United Arab Emirates, we know of Dubai, we know of Abu Dhabi, we know of Kuwait City, we know of Jeddah, Riyadh, and all these fantastic cities. If you've not been to the Middle East, you will not understand what we're talking about. These were desert tracts until they've been transformed into some of the most beautiful cities in the world and most vibrant. They've moved up into other categories of business. They are now financial centers, logistic hubs, and tourism centers also. The whole thinking here is that one day the oil will run out, so they are already investing. And besides that, they've decided to start to have huge amounts of their own savings. They call it sovereign wealth funds, and these sovereign wealth funds are now forces of finance in their own right. They invest on the New York Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, and they make plays like private equity firms as much as they do portfolio investment. It's a very big and complex and sophisticated Middle East that we have now. And it is this sophistication that President Trump recognizes, and it is this influence that they now have as a financial juggernaut that has made President Trump to hold off the Israelis despite the strength of their lobby, told them it's time for peace. Today, he called MBS he hosted the Saudi Crown Prince. His name is Mohammed Bin Salman. He is a force of change in the Middle East. I can tell you that because I have always said I live in Saudi Arabia. He hosted Mohammed Bin Salman in the Oval Office, and he also hosted him to a dinner today, and he made a lot of pronouncements. And these pronouncements have been to the benefit of Saudi Arabia and the relationship between America and Saudi Arabia. The major development was that Saudi Arabia is now designated as a non-NATO ally. That is the designation that changes things for most countries. The countries that are in that designation are Japan, Israel, South Korea, and recently Qatar. The reason being the continuous threat of possible attack, mainly from Iran. It had always been that the big boogeyman of that neighborhood was Iran, because Iran is a theocracy, and they removed the Shah, and Iran became against American interest, and ever since they started threatening all the monarchies in the Middle East there. But now America has designated, at least Trump has designated Saudi Arabia non-NATO ally. And it was a very great moment of rehabilitation for the Saudi prince. The Saudi prince is very articulate, is very visionary. I know this for a fact because we see him. He's very busy. Saudi Arabia seems to want to catch up because the country that sparked all these changes within the Middle East there is not the one you will think. Kuwait started the whole move towards improving the Middle East, but it is Dubai that took it to a new frontier. The United Arab Emirates, small as they are, they have a GDP of $500 billion. And that is just a tad lower than what Saudi Arabia, big, with 40 million people, produced by far more oil. And so the Saudi Crown Prince instituted reforms, and these reforms was also to hold back the influence of the military class the religious class in Saudi Arabia, and bring them into modernity. He is forcing Saudi Arabia into modernity by the scruff of the neck. Every interest group that may want to remain strongly conservative, it's a very strongly conservative Wahhabist society, we should remember. And Wahhabism is one of the most conservative and strongest strands of Islam, but he has tried to make them see the vision ahead, and he has done so well in trying to transform that country. Great investments in their infrastructure, investments in their sports, investment and then reforms too that has giving more rights to women, more rights even to migrant workers. It continues to improve that country, and we all know the great investments in infrastructure. We know it's not a hard thing for you to see. Just Google and you will see. This is trip to America today. It came to cement it. The President Trump was very happy to designate, to have the role of designating the Saudis as a country, as a non-NATO ally. He hosted a dinner, and in that dinner, it was there that he made this pronouncement. I think I can share this one here now. No, that's not what I want to share. I want to share this one. Yes, this is where President Trump was making this.
Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that we're taking our military cooperation to even greater heights by formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, which is something that is very important to them. And I'm just telling you now for the first time because I wanted to keep a little secret for tonight. I just heard him say, "Oh, that's nice."
Yes, but even before then, he had hosted the Saudi Crown Prince in the Oval Office, and he allowed the Saudi Crown Prince to defend himself against some of the allegations that have been made against him.
Just by asking a question like that.
Just ask, Mr. President, if you allow me to answer. I feel painful about the families of 9/11 in America, but we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden, he used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi relation. That's the purpose of 9/11. So whoever buying that means they are helping Osama bin Laden's purpose of destroying this relation. He knows that strong relation between America and Saudi Arabia is bad for extreme.
Yes, he talked about Osama bin Laden's role because there were, out of the 19 people that were in part of that September 11, 19 of them were Saudis, and they came particularly from one province. Ironically, the province I live in Saudi Arabia called Asher province. Asher province is somewhere in the southern part of Saudi Arabia. There, closer to Yemen. That area is where most of the people who took part in the September 11, I think 19 of them were from that region. That's where Osama bin Laden recruited from. He also talked about the unfortunate incident of the death and of Jamal Khashoggi and all that. He was pertinent. He showed remorse and he talked about it and all that. Nevertheless, the relationship is building. He said he's going to invest over $600 billion in American economy. Obviously, it will be in treasury bonds, maybe, but maybe also in other investments. The Saudis are very savvy. Their Saudi investment fund is a very, very savvy instrument. They were at $800 billion in assets under management when he took it over. Now he said that he wants to move it to 1 trillion. They're close to 1 trillion. They may even have surpassed that amount of money. One other person too, they later on hosted a dinner for him. He made a speech in that dinner and he said, talked about the relationship, 90 years old, their involvement in World War II, and he gave a whole history of it. It's very articulate, he talks very well, and it is a tribute to the Saudis that this leadership of the Middle East, looking forward, wanting to continue to improve themselves, change their image, make the most of their asset of oil, because we should know that this asset of oil is a transient asset. Its usefulness as a driver of energy source and driver of civilization will one day come to it. It is already being challenged by lithium. It is being challenged by all the new systems that give us energy, including nuclear, including solar and wind. But hydrocarbon energy is still useful. It will be useful for several years and several generations. But they are looking beyond that, and that is why the Saudis are very, very forward-looking at this time now. Whilst among the guests in the dinner party today, Elon Musk, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Elon, or already I should know, the Saudi investment company invests heavily in Elon's enterprises. They invest in XAI, they invest in Twitter. In fact, we should remember it was almost a deal he was to have made with the Saudis, one of the Saudi princes that led him to say he was going to take Twitter private, but unfortunately, that deal fell through. And was it Twitter or was it Tesla? Yes, he wanted to take Tesla private, and he had problems with the SEC because of that. They eventually invested in XAI. They are also investing in X. So they have big investment. They are major investors in Elon's projects. They're investing in his chips and all the other investment he has. Even in Starlink, they're investors. He keeps everything private and does serious investment and all. Cristiano Ronaldo too is a very big face. He's one of the big catches of Saudi Arabia. When Cristiano Ronaldo moved to Saudi Arabia and they paid all the amount of money they paid for to have him in their league, it is simply because they were not paying him as a footballer, they were paying him as an influencer. He is now part of their marketing, and he helped them in getting the World Cup to Saudi Arabia in 2030. I think 2034, they will be hosting the World Cup. Cristiano Ronaldo is now very much a part of the Saudi reinvention of their image. He plays soccer there. He still scores a lot of goals. It keeps him very good. Their league is growing. They are trying to get as much people. They tried their best to get Messi into their league, but they couldn't get Messi into their league. But they do have a lot. I remember a Nigerian footballer there, or Ihalo was there. Quite a lot of Africans. Sedemane is there. Quite a lot of Brazilians. They are now competitors to the English Premiership for footballers, but just that their league is not of that at par yet. They already have invested in boxing extensively. They have invested in Formula One. They've invested in UFC. Mixed martial arts, they are really, really investing in making Saudi Arabia and the Middle East a destination. Anyway, let's move on to other things. I wish him well in his trip to America. I hope that it gets to improve things, because the geopolitical dynamics and all. For now, it is the princes that are running the monarchs that are running the show in Saudi Arabia. We never know how it is going to be for now, but we know that because of their interest in development, they need an environment of peace, and it is for that reason they put pressure on President Trump, and that environment of peace has been created in Gaza, and hopefully they will have that peace, and because they want to continue to grow. Well, Ukraine. The big news in Ukraine today was that Rostom Umerov has come to America and got to seek asylum. There was a lot of news about it, that the man has bolted. We already know that Timur Mindish, President Zelensky's very close ally, has already voted to Israel, and he's not hoping to be extradited back to Ukraine from Israel. Today they had a vote in the parliament of Ukraine to dismiss the two, or make the two ministers involved in this particular scandal to resign, the energy minister and the justice minister. But the opposition wanted every member of Zelensky's government to resign, so they blocked the vote somehow. There was a lot of cacophony in the parliament. Nevertheless, the news came out that Rostom Umerov is seeking asylum in America. Turns out it's not so true. The Ukraine Center for Countering Disinformation and National Security and Defense Council said that is not true. It's fake news, that he's in America to continue discussions with the American. Umerov, who is the current national secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, is in U.S. on a planned official working trip to hold meetings and consultations aimed at strengthening international support for Ukraine. He remains in constant contact with the Ukrainian leadership and is fulfilling all his assigned tasks. Anyway, President Zelensky is doing his diplomacy. He won't be cut short of it. He won't be found. He has been very active diplomatically, and he went to Spain today. He went to Spain and he met with the Spanish prime minister there. And he also visited the Spanish military industrial complex. Everybody wants to sell arms to Spain, to Ukraine. Everybody in Europe now wants to sell arms to Ukraine, since the Americans have said that the Europeans should raise money for Ukraine's well-being. Everybody wants to. Sweden wants to. Spain wants to. France wants to. And we now see that Spain has put themselves forward too. So today, during the meeting with the Prime Minister of Spain, we focused closely on our defense cooperation and the face of ongoing Russian attacks. Ukraine truly values Spain's readiness to continue providing assistance. Spain consistently implements our bilateral security arrangement, which ensures confidence in annual support, 1 billion each year. I'm grateful for Spain's willingness to contribute 100,000 to the Pearl Initiative. Yes, Spain, though, is beginning to have strong opposition to this war within the Spanish government. They are beginning to have strong opposition to the war, and it may affect it. But he did eventually visit some military countries and saw some of the Spanish military infrastructure hardware on offer. Drones, anti-drones, every drone are now the new weapons of modern day warfare. Anyway, Zelensky may be looking for new support all across Europe, but I got a report today that was quite frightening. I don't know how. I have to get to know more about the veracity of this thing, but it just shows about the level of destruction and killings of Ukrainians. Most Ukrainians, I met one Ukrainian in Austin, Texas here, and they corroborated the fact that most of the cemeteries are full. Today, one of the local authorities in Lvov was saying that only 20 spots left in the cemetery in Lvov where fallen armed forces of Ukraine soldiers are buried. This is stated by local authorities. The head of the city council executive, Yevhen Boyko, added that a new section will soon be open. They are expanding the cemeteries. The cemeteries are full. That is not a lie. Many people show videos of it, and that shows the vast amount of killings going on. The Russians have been very lethal. The videos they show these days are very violent. They are very specific. They target people. One commentator was actually pointing out the fact that prior to now, the Russians used to just attack logistic vehicles, but these days, from their very vast amount of drones, I think the Russians now have a vast cache of drones, and they use it in attacking individuals. Another thing too is that they use their reconnaissance drones sometimes, and then give the locations out to the artillery, and the artillery pinpoint destruction of the soldiers. We saw that today again in a video that came out about the Russian attack in Syvirsk. Syvirsk is being overrun at the most mind-boggling rate that this war has seen. We already know of what's going on in Kupiansk, in Pokros. That's why long, drawn-out wars that finally are seeing its last days. But today, after holding off Syvirsk for 3 years, a well-fortified bastion of Ukrainian resistance, Syvirsk has been penetrated and it's been overrun. Already the Russians have moved into the center of Syvirsk. That is what some commentators are saying. I have a map here, not like in this particular map is asserting that this is how much movement the Russians made into Syvirsk in just this past 24 hours. It's been amazing that some people are saying they are in the outer fringes of the eastern part of Syvirsk. Some are saying that they've taken 1/3 of Syvirsk, but this one here is conjecturing that they have moved in very fast into Syvirsk. Syriac too also talked about Volchansk. Syriac said that Russian forces continue to make progress in around Volchansk. Approximately 90% of the city is now under Russian control. just west of Volxans, Russian forces have reportedly captured another small settlement of Sheheni. They are now less than 2 kilometers from the town of Vilcha. The Russians are moving at a pace that is, it seems like they're overrunning the Ukrainians. Is this portending that the Ukrainian military is beginning to collapse? Heliopoli, they are getting very close to it. And they are all the cities and all the settlements around Heliopoli, they are just overrunning. They are making an encirclement of it. In fact, they believe that within a week, there will be full operational encirclement of Heliopoli. It was expected that this is a campaign that would have gone into 2026, but the way the Ukrainian military is collapsing, it just may be a project that may be concluded this December before 2026. Anyway, one of the things, the big news going on in Russia now is that the Russians are hosting the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. President Putin met with the prime minister. I think the prime minister, premier. His name is the premier. He's the premier of China. He had also met with all the other heads. He had a meeting with all the other heads. There's the head of the delegation from Iran. I think he's the deputy president from Iran. They have all these members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They sent high-power team, and he met with Li Chang today in Moscow. That meeting is strengthening their relationship. Already, we saw the Li Chang had already met with the prime minister of Russia, Mishustin, and they had extensive discussions. He himself just got back from China. This relationship between the two is just extending, and for whatever people say, it is a relationship that is both beneficial to both parties, and they are keeping it going. They are strengthening it. Putin highlighted that cooperation inside Shanghai Cooperation Organization is transforming the SCO into a real pillar of global stability, and noted that Russian-Chinese relationship have entered a new era with record trade, expanded industrial projects, and deepening strategic alignment across energy, infrastructure, and security. These two countries are strengthening each other. We see now the military strength of the Chinese have a lot to do, especially regarding their aviation and their planes, the J-20, the J-35, all their planes, and even the engines they now produce locally have a lot to do with it. I think WC 15 and 10, I think they have a lot to do with technology they got from the Russians. The Russians, on the other hand, are buying consumer products, buying machinery, buying all those things are helping their military industrial complex and also helping their commercial production, because they want to now be able to produce things for their agriculture. They want to produce things for consumption, basic consumption within their economies, not rely only on the Chinese. Even the cars and automation products they want to be able to produce by themselves. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is having a meeting there, and it's one that is taking place. Another meeting too that was called very, very desperately and fast was the meeting between the Japanese and the Chinese. The Japanese dispatched a high-ranking official of their foreign ministry to go and meet with the Chinese, because their problems are escalating following the discussion, the statement by Designate, their prime minister, that she would deploy Japanese support, help to the Taiwanese in case, because they look at it as an existential threat to Japan if China invades Taiwan. It has created a lot of problems. The Chinese have said Chinese people should be careful about going to Japan. That's impacting a lot of tourist visits to Japan. I think the Chinese constitute 25% of tourist visits to Japan. They also have a lot of students studying in Japan. They warned them, and there's a lot of crisis between the two of them. I had a video today of how the Chinese produced one military video to, I think, warn the Japanese that they now hold most of the military cards. But I think I've run out of time. Maybe another time I'll show that video. But anyway, thanks for being with me. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you have any views regarding the opinions I've just expressed, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Until my next video, you have a great day.